Hey there, welcome back to the After the Sermon podcast, the series where we dive into the text from this past Sunday, just giving some more stories, or especially in this case with as much text as we tried to cover in one Sunday morning, just some extra details, but really just the encouragement and the application of that text as we're studying through the story of grace. I am Pastor Ben here with Pastor Matt.
Hey guys.
And we are both 11 years old and got new Legos for our birthdays, because that's what you get when you're 11.
Yep.
And if you don't, you had a sad childhood.
Yeah. Legos are fun.
I still buy myself Legos.
Yeah, I'm annoyed my kids can put them together on their own. So if you want to give me a big, massive Lego set, just for me, to tell the kids they can't help. It's like a puzzle.
Or you could be like, I think he's a YouTuber. I've seen shorts of it. The guy that will look at a Lego set and find a way to do it with random pieces. So there's like a pink Millennium Falcon that he made. It's a giant, it's
that's
1,000 pieces. Yeah, it's crazy.
I want to do the Titanic. I want that set. So
I've been really into, actually bought a couple. It's been a little while now, but flowers for some reason have been like a popular Lego thing.
Yeah.
And it's nice because then they don't die.
Yeah.
But they're fun because it's like unique shapes in it. But anyway, this podcast is not the Lego podcast.
It
That's
is not.
a separate.
It is not.
Separate feed there.
Yeah.
But so this past Sunday, we talked about a lot of chapters in Genesis.
Yes.
Just looking at the origin life of Abraham and God's covenant with him, and just a lot of different things that he faced in from his calling into traveling towards what God had told him to do and towards this promise that God had laid out for him. It's really focused on what it is that God provided for Abraham and how he responded, and what that teaches us as a church, how we need to respond to what God has called us to.
Yeah, it's obviously birthday Sunday. And so we want to acknowledge God's faithfulness. And we usually take this Sunday to look back, but to look forward. And you see that played out throughout the whole whole Old Testament, even the New Testament, looking back at what God has done, looking ahead to what he continues to do and will do. And so when we get to the life of Abraham, it's a really cool story. Obviously, he is a patriarch. The people of Israel they go back to Abraham. He's got his own song, Father Abraham. He had many sons, and many sons had Father Abraham.
But only one offspring, as we learned on Sunday.
Exactly. And so we did not dance or sing the song. But this is what's unique about this story is we go from Adam and Eve. We see them being fruitful and multiplying, even though it's leading to chaos and sin. Noah and Ark kind of restores that back to God's design. But even from there, we've got some family issues. Then we get to the story of the Tower of Babel. So now when we get to Abraham, there's a lot of people on earth. And now God is, for the first time, forming for himself people that are his. Everybody else have been one-offs. Adam, a one-off. Noah, a one-off. Now it's, okay, this is a people group, that these are my people. And we see throughout the rest of books of the law, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and throughout the Old Testament, where God is saying, I will be your God and you will be my people. And so God makes a covenant with Abram. He later gives him a fuller name, Abraham, and gives him just change like, hey, you belong to me now. What I love about this story is that it's so different than Noah. Noah is walking with God. We see he potentially is following God. And God gives him very specific plans on what to do. With Abraham, we saw at the end of Joshua, he's pagan. But Joshua 24, Joshua says they served other gods. God says, Abraham, you're mine now. And I'm going to do this for you, for my glory. And it changes the whole trajectory of not only Abraham's life, but our lives from this. And does not tell Abraham what's going on. He says, you're going to get up and you're going to go to a land that I'm not going to tell you where. And Abraham, by faith, does this. We see that in Hebrews 11. He goes to a land that obviously is pointing to a greater land. This is a heavenly reward. And God forms this covenant with Abraham that he will not only make Abraham a great nation, but from his offspring will be the one where all nations will be blessed, which Galatians 3 tells us it's all through Jesus.
Yeah, and this covenant, as we again fast forwarded through some of these different snapshots of Abraham's experience with Abimelech, with his nephew Lot, with high priest Melchizedek, even with Sarah and Hagar, God is constantly reminding him of the covenant.
Yeah.
That God has promised he will do.
Yeah.
He's not dependent on Abraham to do anything except obey what he's called him to. And each of those situations sometimes does a better job, sometimes doesn't do as good of a job. God is consistent and faithful through all of them.
Yeah. We see as the time goes on, it's about 25 years between the first time Abraham is called to leave and go towards Canaan and when he has the birth of Isaac. And so for 25 years, God is telling him where to go. And along the way, God reassures him that he's going to keep his promises and then unveils a little bit more until we finally get towards chapter 19 and 20, where he says, next year, you're going to have a son. And this is what's going to happen. And you've made it this far. And honestly, it's Abraham's following by faith that God's going to keep his promises. Was it easy? No. 25 years is a long stretch. And when you're not in limbo, but you're still waiting, most of us have a hard time waiting for lunch. And God calls him to wait, but to go, and to not live in complacency and to trust him. I'm gonna fulfill this promise, but reminding him over and over again, I'm with you, Abraham. I'm here. You're doing what is expected. Don't forget what I promised you.
Yeah, one on top of the waiting too, again, not that we went deeply into it, and I imagine next week we'll talk more about it. With his age, with Sarah's age, their response to, you're going to have a son, here near the end of where we studied, like, I'm 90 years old, or, what?
Yeah. It's, of course, Abraham and Sarah both laugh. Of course. There's a lot of things that go on with the human bodies that would make having a baby 99 and 100 pretty impossible, and why Sarah would laugh. And that's why we see in that story where the three men, one of them being, we believe, the pre-incarnate Jesus, two other angels who eventually go on to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, why they say what you think is impossible is very possible with God, which is the same thing that the angel okay, so I didn't mention this Sunday. I can't prove this. This is all theory, okay? Let me read the verses. I wasn't planning to talk about this on the podcast, and you don't even know what I'm about to talk about, so you're okay. All right? So in chapter 18, so in verse 12, so Sarah laughed to herself, saying, after I am worn out and my Lord is old, shall I have pleasure? The Lord said to Abraham, this is Lord, all caps Lord, meaning Yahweh. We believe this is probably pre-incarnate Jesus says, why did Sarah laugh and say, shall I indeed bear a child now that I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? Is anything too difficult for them? At the appointed time, I will return to you about this time next year, and Sarah shall have a son. All right? And so I wonder, going to fast forward to the book of, let me make sure I get the right book. It's either Matthew or Luke. All right, it's one of the two, okay? It's going to be Luke. When the angel comes to Mary. Get there, I got to flip. Be patient, listeners. We're getting there. When the angel Gabriel says in Luke chapter 1, verse 37, for nothing will be impossible for God. Here's my theory. I think Gabriel was one of the angels there with Jesus. He's heard this before. And he heard it from Jesus himself, who is now in the womb of Mary. This is my theory. Can't. Because Jesus isn't there to tell Mary.
Yeah.
All right.
So you also have the connection of Sarah being like, how can I have a baby at this age? And Mary saying, how can I have a baby as a virgin.
Exactly. It's literally a repeated story. And Mary by faith says, okay. So that's obviously there's no verse in Isaiah that connects this, but I think it's too on the nose that the language is very similar. Mary's response is obedience and faith. But I wonder if the angel Gabriel, who makes an appearance throughout, is the angel there with the Lord that says, when he says, whoa, is anything too hard? Sarah, Abraham, come on. Angel Gabriel, because he's an angel, he's not all knowing, shows up and Mary's like, how is this possible? And Gabriel's like, I'm going to use the words of Jesus. Is anything too difficult for the Lord? It's just really cool gospel connection. I don't know what we were talking about there.
That's okay. Just the different elements of the story of Abraham. Part of the question you posed at the beginning and that we answered near the end through seeing Abraham and God and the responses to these different stories, you asked what type of people we're called to be as the church. And so in honor of 11th birthday Sunday, we came up with 11 things that we can see out of the story, out of these stories of who we are to be as a church.
Yeah, there's so much application from these stories, and you can look at them. If we were going through the book of Genesis, we would highlight each of these 11 things. But the first one is that we're to be a church formed by God himself. Do you want to work through all 11, or how do you want to just touch on them?
I think we can touch on some of them. Yeah, we don't have to necessarily hit every one of them. But
we start there because we have to understand, in our American context, this is what as elders, we're constantly pushing back on. We're not forming a social club. We're not forming what we want. We don't get to form anything. God is the one who forms for himself people. And so when people walk into our church, who are we to say, you don't belong here? God is forming it. Now, our instances where the church, we're responsible to say, you don't belong here. But that's when they show themselves to not belong to God. And so we help people, hey, if you're a follower of God, God's forming us. And so he's molding us. He's knitting us together, we see in the church. And so we have to remember, we don't want to form ourselves. We want God to form us. He's forming for himself a people for his own good pleasure, as we see in Ephesians 2.
Yeah. Another one that stuck out to me was really the second one of we have to be willing to leave comfort. We got to pursue what God has called us for, right? Yeah. We see this in Abraham's story of where he had grown up. God was basically like, pick everything up, leave, go to this foreign place that you don't know, that you're potentially an enemy in some ways, or at least a stranger at the very least. When we see in the different places, he goes into Egypt and is afraid for his life, afraid for Sarah's life, and ends up lying to protect himself. So we know that's not a comfortable place to be.
Yeah. We're very much concerned about our comfort, are we not? I think this is the American mindset. We're chasing after comfort. And I don't think that's necessarily a problem. I'm not saying get rid of your house, live on the street, be uncomfortable.
Wool sweaters all the time.
I think what God is calling Abraham to do is choose him over comfort. And so it's easy to be like, especially as a church, all right? We're thinking of this as a church. Individually, we are all struggling with it, okay? Currently, I rent a car, and it has a heated steering wheel. And I'm like, that's a pretty good comfort that I want in a car. My cars don't have that. And so that leads to jealousy or envy and all sorts of things, right? Eventually, we're dealing with that. As a church, here's what we mean. As we are growing and as the Lord is pushing us and sending us out, letting go of comfort means potentially letting go of a seat in our space to sit somewhere uncomfortable because it's going to be better for a new family to be comfortable in that seat, right? Being uncomfortable is meaning, hey, I'm going to have to serve in a capacity that's a little outside my comfort zone for the good of the church and for the glory of God. Being uncomfortable is stepping into some leadership roles when you feel like you're not ready, but this is the direction we're going. And I say because these conversations are coming with our church and doing things because of where we're at and what we're believing the doors God's opening. Being uncomfortable is I want to give more so that we can prepare for a bigger space. And this was so many people brought in gifts, and not just one time, but maybe the Lord's pushing you to do that. We talked a little bit about that at Melchizedek, right? The whole thing's loosely in our hands. It's the same concept. I'm not afraid to be uncomfortable for the cause of Christ.
Yeah, and I think the other side of that conversation too, you had mentioned that we also are not going to take heavenly matters into earthly hands.
Yeah.
As we're trying to navigate things, it's easy to put on a business-minded hat or a logistical hat and get rid of the spiritual elements of that and the things that God says. Again, not all things are possible with God, right? But not in the sense of, okay, the magic button to solve all the problems is just praying the right words. Nothing like that. But allowing that space where God is working and being discerning and listening and following those leadings and figuring out, okay, what is the path? What is the door?
Yeah. If God can accomplish our salvation, he can accomplish anything. I think that's the point of it. But that doesn't mean he's going to accomplish it the way we want it. Yes, do I believe God can drop $5 million in our lap for land in a building? Absolutely. I have the faith that he could do it. But I'm not like putting all my eggs in that basket. He's given us wisdom to navigate different things. And as you notice, as Abraham goes, he's doing things, and then God says, okay, here's a little bit more. Here's a little bit more. Noah is 100 years he builds. Someone mentioned this in our life group. For roughly 100 years, he builds the ark. And God's waiting for him to build the ark. And so what is God, in air quotes here, waiting on us to do in order to accomplish what he's doing? But he wants to work through us. And so, yes, nothing is impossible with God, but that's not a name it and claim it type of faith. It's a faith that, hey, if God can accomplish our salvation, then he can move mountains. He can open doors that we never dreamed of. He can do far more than we can ask and think, as Ephesians 3:20 tells us. And so we hold things loosely in our hands, knowing that God's given us everything we need and will continue to do. He's provided once, he'll provide again. And while we wait, we don't become complacent and we don't complain, but we continue until the Lord says, okay, this is where you're going now, as he did with the life of Abraham.
And we can trust in God to keep his promises, to keep his covenant as he's promised Abraham. And again, his methods and his ways, going back to birth of Isaac, that's
your ways are not my ways, says the Lord. My ways are not your ways, says the Lord. I think we need to remember frequently.
Yeah. So the story of Abraham, again, so much good stuff in there as we move forward and looking into next week and looking specifically at Isaac and God's covenant promise that we spent so much time talking about this past Sunday, and looking at how God tests Abraham's faith in that respect to Isaac. The time in between there, really, I think the encouragement is, man, take these stories that we couldn't really go fully deep into and look at the story of Abimelech, look at Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah, and the way that Abraham petitions for, man, if there's even just, I think it gets down to 10 people that follow you, please don't destroy it. You know, that there's so many great lessons in there that we just
can't get to
possibly get to with this study. Right.
There's a whole lot, you could say, of stories we can get to.
Yeah, and they've got some good flavor in that story.
They do.
Any other last thoughts or places to think about forward to as we're moving on?
Just so thankful for what God has done in our church the last 11 years. So thankful for the people that have joined us recently, for the people that have stuck with us. Are such a vital part to our church. We can't do this without them. And I can't wait to see how the Lord continues to use us and to lean into it and to press on for his glory And so over the next few months, and we just prepare, let me just say, there's going to be times where it's going to be uncomfortable, but it's good. Growing pains are good. And so let me just encourage us to set our eyes by faith on the promises of God. He has not promised us a building. I know that. But he's promised to build his church. And if he's continuing to build his church through salvations, through families moving to the area that are looking for a fresh start, if he's building us that way, then he's going to continue to provide for us, for him to continue building the church. And so I wait in exciting anticipation and expectation of what the Lord's going to do. And just think of the pre-incarnate Jesus said to Abraham, just wait from a year from now when you see it. And Lord, what will you do from a year from now in the life of our church, where we can look back and say, yep, God, you were faithful. You were faithful.
Yeah. And from looking back 11 years, thinking when I first met you and came in, and looking to even where we're at now, where God has brought us to, and the things that have happened. Yeah, I never could have imagined. I wouldn't have been able to predict. And if you and I had been the architects,
right,
it would not look like this.
Right.
In good ways and bad ways, but
Correct.
Ultimately in God's rowing and leading of his people. It's always, we joke frequently.
Yeah.
It's like there's a third person in these conversations.
Yeah. Like someone else is in charge here.
Yeah.
Which we are thankful for.
Yes. We will look forward to seeing you again in life groups coming up, or next Sunday morning if we're not able to make that. Again, always a free invitation to show up to those. There's no prerequisites there, and it's just a great time to connect with people and just to be able to talk through, especially as we have these kind of monster bites of scripture that we're chewing off on Sunday mornings, to have the community of God's family to talk through things that we just don't have all the time for Sunday morning. But either way, whenever we see you, don't ever hesitate to reach out and just let us know if you ever need anything. And we'll look forward to seeing you.